South Park has been teaching us about business for over 25 years, and most people have no idea. From coffee shops that serve literal sewage, so they can maximize profit, to amusement parks run by psychotic fourth graders, so they can maximize on demand. South Park has created a business school curriculum disguised as a comedy, and today I'm ranking every major business in South Park from worst to best, starting with one of the most dog shit, Raisins. We have Raisins. If you've never seen this episode, Raisins is basically South Park's version of Hooters, except somehow much more disturbing. The restaurant employs preteen waitresses with names like Lexus, Mercedes, Porsche, and Ferrari. Yeah, they're literally named after luxury cars, which should tell you everything about how this place operates. These girls flirt with adult customers and manipulate them emotionally to extract as much money as possible. Nice. The whole scam gets exposed through Butters, who becomes completely infatuated with a waitress named Lexus. She convinces him to keep spending money on overpriced food and drinks by pretending to care about him. Butters blows through all his allowance money because he genuinely believes this girl likes him, when really she's just following a business model designed to exploit lonely customers. Poor Butters, I feel you. But here's what makes Raisins the worst business on this list. It's not just selling a bad product or ripping people off. It's actively damaging people psychologically. The customers leave feeling more lonely and manipulated than when they arrived. The employees are being taught that their value comes from fake intimacy and emotional manipulation. Everyone involved in it gets hurt, except the owner. Though this business model exists in real life too, and South Park absolutely nailed why it's so toxic. When your entire revenue stream depends on making customers feel special, while secretly viewing them as walking ATMs, you've created something genuinely harmful to society. OnlyFans. But at least Raisins was honest about being terrible. You knew what you were getting into when you walked through those doors. Our next business tried to hide behind family values. Tweak Bros Coffee House. Tweak Bros Coffee House represents everything wrong with the support local business mentality taken to its logical extreme. This family-owned coffee shop in South Park becomes the poster child for why small doesn't automatically mean better. When the corporate chain Harbucks threatens to move into town, Mr. Tweak goes into full panic mode. But instead of improving his product or service, he decides to manipulate a group of fourth graders into becoming his personal propaganda machine. He convinces Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman to write a school report about how evil corporate chains are and how important it is to support local businesses. The kids buy into this completely and rally the entire town against Harbucks. They organize protests, give passionate speeches about community values, and paint Harbucks as this soulless corporate monster trying to destroy small-town America. But here's the kicker. When people actually try Tweak's coffee versus Harbucks coffee, there's no comparison. Tweak's coffee literally tastes like sewage. We're not talking about a slight difference in quality here. We're talking about a product so bad that it's basically undrinkable. This episode destroys the myth that local businesses are automatically morally superior to corporations. Mr. Tweak was just as willing to lie, manipulate, and use emotional blackmail as any corporate executive. The only difference was that he was doing it while serving an objectively terrible product. The real genius of this storyline is how it exposes the emotional manipulation tactics that many small businesses use. Instead of competing on quality, price, or service, they compete on guilt. They make you feel like a bad person for choosing a better product just because it comes from a larger company. Tweak Bros earns its spot as the second worst business because it combined terrible quality with moral manipulation. At least most bad businesses are just incompetent. This one was actively dishonest about its own shortcomings. Speaking of businesses that seemed evil but turned out to have a point, let's talk about the company everyone was supposed to hate. Harbucks. Harbucks is South Park's version of Starbucks, and it was set up to be the villain of the coffee episode. The corporate chain moving into small-town South Park to crush the local competition. Classic David versus Goliath story, right? Wrong. This is where South Park completely flips the script on typical anti-corporate messaging. When Harbucks finally opens and people try their coffee, it has 25% less raw sewage taste than Tweak's coffee. That's not even a joke about corporate marketing speak. That's a literal improvement in product quality. Harbucks is serving genuinely better coffee at competitive prices with superior customer service. The townspeople who were protesting against Harbucks suddenly realize they've been drinking garbage coffee for years just to support a local business. The corporate chain isn't succeeding through predatory practices or evil manipulation. They're succeeding because they're actually better at running a coffee business. This was a huge middle finger to the typical narrative about big versus small business. South Park was basically saying that maybe, just maybe, large corporations get large because they're good at what they do, not because they're inherently evil. The episode also touches on how market competition benefits consumers. Before Harbucks showed up, Tweak had no incentive to improve his coffee because he had no real competition. The threat of corporate competition forced him to actually think about product quality for the first time. Harbucks ranks in the middle of our list because while they were a well-run business that served customers better than the competition, they also represent how corporate efficiency can sometimes steamroll local character and community connection. It's not that they're evil, but there is something lost when every coffee shop becomes exactly the same. The episode doesn't take a strong stance either way, which is what makes it brilliant business commentary. Sometimes the big company really is better. Sometimes the local business really does add irreplaceable value. The key is being honest about which situation you're actually in. But even well-intentioned businesses can become monsters when consumers completely lose self-control and personal responsibility. Walmart. Walmart takes everything we think we know about corporate power and flips it completely upside down. The superstore arrives in South Park, offering impossibly low prices on everything, and the townspeople can't resist shopping there even though they know it's destroying their local economy. Every single local business in South Park closes down because they can't compete with Walmart's prices. The hardware store, the pharmacy, the grocery store, they all get wiped out. The townspeople hate what's happening to their community, but they can't stop themselves from shopping at Walmart because the deals are just too good. This creates massive guilt and cognitive dissonance. Everyone wants to boycott Walmart and support local business, but when push comes to shove, they choose to save money on their groceries and household items. They complain about corporate power while simultaneously feeding that power with their wallets. The townspeople eventually get so frustrated that they decide to burn down the Walmart. They succeed in destroying the building, thinking they've solved their problem. But the next morning, Walmart has rebuilt itself overnight. They burn it down again, it rebuilds again. They can't kill this thing no matter what they do. That's when South Park reveals its masterstroke. The episode shows us that Walmart, Kmart, Target, and all the other big box retailers are actually manifestations of consumer desire itself. They're not separate entities imposing their will on helpless communities. They're literally created by our collective demand for low prices and convenience. The real enemy isn't Walmart the corporation. It's the part of human nature that wants to get more stuff for less money, even when we know it has negative consequences. Walmart only has power because we give it power through our purchasing decisions. This is some of the most sophisticated economic commentary ever put in a cartoon. It's basically a 22-minute lesson on how market forces work and why corporate boycotts usually fail. People say they want to support small business, but their actual behavior reveals what they really value. Walmart ranks fourth because while the business itself was serving customer needs efficiently, the episode shows how unchecked consumer behavior can create unintended social consequences. It's not Walmart's fault that people can't control their shopping impulses, but the end result still damages communities. The brilliance is that South Park doesn't offer any easy solutions. They just force you to confront the uncomfortable truth that we're all complicit in creating the economic systems we claim to hate. At least Walmart was trying to serve customers and give them what they wanted. Our next business owner had much more selfish plans that accidentally created something amazing. Cartmanland. Cartmanland might be the most perfect satire of capitalism ever created, and it stars the most selfish character in television history as an accidental entrepreneur. When Cartman inherits $1 million from his grandmother, he immediately buys an amusement park with one goal in mind: keeping everyone else out so he never has to wait in line for rides. His business plan is literally the opposite of normal business logic. Instead of trying to attract customers, he's trying to repel them. Cartman's dream is to have the entire park to himself. No crowds, no lines, no other people ruining his fun. He buys the place and puts up signs everywhere saying no admittance. And Cartmanland is Cartman's and nobody else's. But reality hits fast. Running an amusement park costs money. He needs security guards to keep people out. He needs maintenance crews to keep the rides working. He needs insurance, utilities, permits, and dozens of other operational expenses he never considered. To pay for these costs, Cartman is forced to let in a small number of paying customers. Just enough to cover his expenses, but not enough to create the crowds he's trying to avoid. This makes the park incredibly exclusive and desirable. People start bribing him for access. Demand goes through the roof. Before Cartman realizes what's happening, he's accidentally created one of the most successful amusement parks in the country. His selfish desire to exclude people made the park so exclusive that everyone wanted to get in. Basic supply and demand turned his antisocial behavior into a brilliant marketing strategy. The park becomes wildly profitable, but Cartman is miserable because it's full of other people. He's succeeded as a businessman while completely failing at his original goal. Then the IRS shows up demanding taxes on his profits, and he loses everything because he never understood the financial responsibilities of business ownership. This episode is a masterclass in how capitalism works despite human nature, not because of it. Cartman's purely selfish motives ended up creating jobs, generating tax revenue, and providing entertainment for thousands of people. His individual greed accidentally served the common good through market forces. The episode also shows the harsh realities of business ownership. Success brings responsibilities you might not want. Profit means taxes. Customer satisfaction requires compromise. You can't just do whatever you want when you're running a business that other people depend on. Cartmanland ranks third because it demonstrates how capitalism can turn even the worst human impulses into positive social outcomes. Cartman learned brutal lessons about business reality, but the market forced him to create something that made other people happy, even though that was never his intention. The genius of this episode is showing how market incentives align selfish behavior with social benefit. Adam Smith's invisible hand concept has never been explained better than through Cartman accidentally becoming a successful businessman. But even chaotic success stories like Cartman Land had more business logic than our next entry, which created massive unintended consequences through government interference. Medical marijuana black market. The KFC medical marijuana episode is South Park at its most prophetic. This was 2010, years before most states legalized marijuana, and the show predicted exactly how prohibition creates more problems than the original problem it was trying to solve. The setup is that South Park passes a law banning KFC and other fast food restaurants from low-income areas for health reasons. At the same time, they legalize medical marijuana, so the KFC location gets converted into a medical marijuana dispensary. Randy develops testicular cancer just to get a medical marijuana prescription, which leads to some of the most ridiculous scenes in South Park history involving him bouncing around town on his enlarged testicles. But the real business lesson comes from Cartman's response to the KFC ban. Cartman immediately recognizes that banning something people want doesn't eliminate demand, it just creates a black market opportunity. He starts an underground fried chicken operation, complete with secret handshakes, lookouts, and Scarface-style drug-dealing scenarios. The episode treats fried chicken exactly like illegal drugs. Cartman becomes a chicken kingpin, selling buckets of KFC out of back alleys and abandoned buildings. He recruits other kids as dealers and runners. The whole thing escalates into gang warfare with competing chicken operations. Meanwhile, the medical marijuana dispensary is operating legally and peacefully. Customers walk in, show their prescriptions, make their purchases, and leave. No violence, no crime, no social problems. The legal drug market is boring and functional. The illegal chicken market is chaotic and dangerous. This episode perfectly illustrates how prohibition creates the exact problems it claims to prevent. By making KFC illegal, the government didn't eliminate fried chicken consumption. They just pushed it underground where it couldn't be regulated or taxed. The black market chicken trade becomes far more harmful to the community than legal KFC ever was. The episode also shows how arbitrary many of our drug laws really are. Marijuana, which was illegal for decades and treated as dangerous, gets legalized and immediately becomes a normal retail business. Fried chicken, which was always legal, gets banned and immediately becomes associated with criminal activity. This ranks second because it's incredibly smart economic commentary disguised as absurd comedy. The episode predicted how legalization would actually work in practice: boring, regulated, and far less problematic than prohibition. At the same time, it showed how well-intentioned government policies can create unintended consequences that are worse than the original problem. South Park was basically teaching an advanced economics lesson about market forces, regulatory capture, and the impossibility of legislating demand out of existence, all while making us laugh at Randy bouncing around on giant testicles. But even this chaotic business situation had more internal logic than our number one entry, which created the most important business lesson in television history, while appearing to be just a throwaway joke. Underpants gnomes. The Underpants gnomes created the most quoted business reference in South Park history, and possibly the most important business lesson ever put on television. What started as a random subplot about mysterious creatures stealing underwear became a global metaphor for failed entrepreneurship. The gnomes have a 3-step business plan that they're absolutely convinced will make them rich. Step 1, collect underpants. Step 2, fabricate. That's it. They've got step 1 down to a science. They're incredibly efficient at sneaking into people's bedrooms and stealing underwear. They've got massive warehouses full of collected underpants. They're completely obsessed with step 3 and constantly talking about all the profit they're going to make, but they have absolutely no idea what step 2 is supposed to be. When the kids ask them directly how collecting underwear leads to profit, the gnomes just repeat step 2, fabricate, like it's obvious. They genuinely believe that if they collect enough underpants, profit will somehow magically appear. This 3-step plan has become shorthand for every poorly thought-out business idea in existence. Tech startups that burn through millions of dollars without a revenue model. Social media platforms that focus on user growth while ignoring monetization. Any business that thinks we'll figure out how to make money later is essentially following the Underpants gnome strategy. The joke works because it perfectly captures how many entrepreneurs think about business. They're passionate about their product or service. That's step 1. They dream about being successful and making lots of money. That's step 3. But they completely skip over the hard part in the middle, which is developing an actual plan for converting their product into sustainable profit. Step 2 is always the hardest part, and it's the part that most people want to ignore. It requires understanding your market, developing a pricing strategy, managing costs, building distribution channels, and dozens of other unglamorous business fundamentals that aren't as exciting as the big vision stuff. The underpants gnome's business model has been referenced in corporate boardrooms, business school classrooms, and investor pitch meetings around the world. It's become the standard way to critique business plans that don't have a clear path to profitability. What makes this the best business lesson in South Park is how it exposes the gap between entrepreneurial enthusiasm and business reality. The gnomes represent every entrepreneur who's ever thought that passion and hard work automatically lead to financial success without needing an actual business strategy. The episode doesn't make fun of entrepreneurship itself. It makes fun of bad entrepreneurship. The gnomes are hardworking and dedicated. They've got excellent operational efficiency and team coordination. They're just missing the most important part of any business: a logical connection between what you do and how you get paid for it. This concept has probably prevented more business failures than any formal business education program. Once you understand the underpants gnomes principle, you can't unsee it. Every time someone presents a business idea without a clear monetization strategy, you immediately think step 2. The underpants gnomes earn the top spot because they created a business education tool that transcends South Park and applies to real-world entrepreneurship. Matt Stone and Trey Parker probably had no idea they were creating one of the most useful business concepts of the internet age, but that's exactly what happened. South Park didn't just make us laugh about business, it made us think about it in completely new ways. From the emotional manipulation tactics at Raisins to the unintended consequences of prohibition with the KFC black market, every business on this list taught us something important about how economics really work. But the underpants gnomes did something special. They gave us a simple framework for evaluating any business idea and determining whether it's likely to succeed or fail. And in a world full of people trying to sell you on their revolutionary startup ideas, that might be the most valuable lesson of all. The next time someone pitches you their amazing business concept, just ask them to explain step 2. If they can't give you a clear answer about how they're actually going to make money, you're probably looking at the underpants gnomes all over again. If you enjoyed this video and want to see how South Park taught you to get rich without anyone knowing, click the video on the screen.